It's a really, really dark color. Today, we have an extra special episode of Color Code. If you are privy to our recent video about the Sherwin-Williams Color of the Year, then you may have a sneaking suspicion as to which color we're talking about today. Without further ado, let's crack the code on SW9130. I really like this color, and I also like when you hit the like button. Design seems to be heading in a pretty cool direction because we have really started to finally see a shift away from excessively monochromatic grayscale palettes, and most likely influenced by the hardships that a lot of us are going through right now around the world. A lot of people miss some color in their lives to inspire them. One of the first colors I think of when I'm looking for something to breathe some life back into my life is green. I'm definitely not shy in admitting how much I love green, both for its connection to nature, but also its duality in being a color that possesses both warm and cool components, ultimately combining blue and yellow. With Sherwin-Williams announcing Evergreen Fog as their 2022 color of the year, I see that as a big step away from traditional farmhouse and minimalist designs and an emergence of color expression and not being afraid of that. For those of you that are new to the Paint People channel, Color Code is a series where we break colors down in detail and give you some paired color options to work with it, usually a light, medium, and dark color, as well as an off-white trim color. But today, we're going to go a little bit further because of the special quality that this color has. Subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get into this thing. Evergreen Fog is a color that was featured quite extensively in 2021 within various Pottery Barn color collections. And even though it seems like it would be closer to a mid-tone color when you look at it, it actually has a pretty low LRV of 30. And this is the light reflectance value, which lets us know how much usable light the color reflects. You could sort of see it as a loose gauge on how light or dark the color is, and 30 is actually quite dark. Now, it's worth noting that there are some colors of the year that are selected as being kind of a wall color in mind, and a lot of them are kind of marketed that way. Basically, the largest portion of a specific color palette. But other times, a color of the year could simply be a special accent color, or at least that was the intention behind its selection. I'm not too sure either way with Evergreen Fog because it somehow has this capability of feeling extremely usable and ultimately a fairly toned down, darker gray-green, but it's still a bit dark, which could be a red flag for certain people, especially those of you looking for a wall color in an open concept hallway or something like that. And that's a place where people tend to go a little bit lighter, at least 50 or higher. But I really want to get into the paired colors in this video, the ones that Sherwin-Williams specifically paired with Evergreen Fog on their website. These selections are specifically fascinating to me because they're so different from Evergreen Fog. So we can start with Shoji White, which is this pretty light, sort of red undertone grayish color that seems to be one of the least offensive colors out there. Its LRV is 74, so even though it's lighter for sure, it's definitely rich enough to be used as a color on walls. It's not a color that you would mistake for being just a primer. It actually is a color. Not really a tough choice made by Sherwin-Williams because it's a very, very safe color, although clearly warmer than Evergreen Fog. But I feel like Shoji White would go with anything, so that's why it was picked, I think. The next color to talk about is Accessible Beige, which is yet another neutral that does favor red a tiny bit, but this one also has a little more of a visible green feel in it, which makes it feel actually more taupe, like a light taupe. You do have a rich brown mixed with gray, which does sometimes give it a slight green undertone in certain lighting, the cooler lighting specifically. So at first glance, this color can work a little more in tandem with Evergreen Fog because they're also a bit closer in depth. Still though, definitely beige leaning rather than green, so it is sort of an interesting pairing. The dark color that Sherwin-Williams paired with Evergreen Fog is Urbane Bronze. And if you watched our Color of the Year announcement video, I was really happy to see this selection. It's a mega deep brown, kind of off black color really, with an LRV of 8. And it also just has a touch of green to neutralize the red in it a little bit, kind of like Accessible Beige does. But it's such a fun choice because it was the last year's color of the year. So you almost have this passing of the torch from one color to the next. If you painted your room Urbane Bronze last year, maybe you can leave it up for another year. It's still going to work within this color palette. Or another idea would be paint 3 of the walls and then leave one Urbane Bronze wall as an accent. It's a really, really dark color and probably trickier to incorporate as a wall paint throughout a room, but absolutely a knockout color choice for accents within the room and accessories. You can see it as an evolution of the matte black look, shaded with a subtle brown hue to change things up a bit. Now there are 3 other colors on top of these 3 that Sherwin-Williams talked about, and you may notice a continuing trend with each one. Woven Wicker, another warmer brown leaning color. This one, however, seems to lack any strong green undertones at all. What's interesting about it is the LRV is only a couple points away from Evergreen Fog, and this is always a nice thing to at least take note of when you're putting colors together, because you know that each color will have that similar light reflectance value, making them an appropriate choice in adjacent spaces where you want to have some consistency in the depth category. However, the hues themselves are actually quite different because Evergreen Fog is mainly green and gray, while Woven Wicker is a pretty rich desert tan type of color. This is another color choice that I would mainly see working in accent form, and I think it's there to more so represent the use of natural woods, which are that kind of color, maybe brown leather, or, you guessed it, some wicker within an Evergreen Fog room. Another color to talk about is Umber, which is kind of a doubling down of that rich bronze type color, almost like the deepest old-fashioned brown mustard you can find. I see a lot of deep, warm metallics that could be represented by this color, and although I'd be fine with it as a wall color choice, it does have a 12 LRV, which would probably be rich for a lot of people out there, and there's likely a ton of colorant inside, which means the coverage might be tricky. That's an insider secret as a paint mixer, but also painter. I've used colors like this before. Not fun to work with. The last color is, in my opinion, the wild card of the bunch, and it's called Bakelite Gold. It's definitely the brightest color. Not in terms of LRV, but just in the color hue itself. It's more of a sunny orange color that's toned down a little bit with some brown, but it represents a fun color for those of you that don't want to surround Evergreen Fog with a bunch of brown and beige. I mentioned it briefly in the color of the year video, but I feel that Sherwin-Williams designed these paired colors to support Evergreen Fog as the primary focal point of the color palette. It may seem like the obvious and uninteresting choice to some people, but I find it refreshing that they're not bombarding us with a ton of other colors that are hard to implement, because that sometimes causes people to make impulsive decisions that they'll regret even a couple months later. I know a lot of you probably have colors like Accessible Beige and Shoji White in your home right now, so the pressure is off a little bit as to what you need to paint if you wanted to go along with this trend. If it doesn't resonate with you, that's totally fine, and you can let this trend pass you by. But for me, you know I'm all for it. I even conveniently have some awesome dollar store coffee mugs that would really vibe with this palette. I mean, a little bit of Evergreen Fog and Urbane Bronze happening. You see that? $1 for this. And that's Canadian silly dollars too. Now I want to leave you with an off-white trim color to use alongside Evergreen Fog, because although Shoji White is kind of an off-white, I want to leave you with an off-white trim color to use alongside Evergreen Fog, because still, white trim tends to be the most popular choice, so I figured it'd be useful to have a color in mind. It's quite a bit lighter than Shoji White, which is good because even though Shoji White's an off-white, you sometimes want something brighter. And I think this color will fit pretty well with the other colors as well. So my pick would be Sherwin-Williams White Snow. With its 90 LRV, it's bright, fresh, and fun, and it's really going to stand out as a radiant trim color choice. I'll also leave you some other videos related to this topic, including the Sherwin-Williams Color of the Year announcement video, which basically is just me gushing about how excited I am about this color. Stay tuned.